to the Standing Finance Committee.
This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee. Let me quickly remind honourable members of the House and those public officers who are in this session with us. Questions to the Minister shall not exceed 3 minutes. Questions to the Minister shall not exceed 3 minutes. A member is allowed 3 supplementary questions. That is, questions that are connected to or in relation to the first question that is posed. The Minister has 5 minutes to respond, and this response must be relevant to the questions asked. Public officers, when you're addressing the chair, you indicate your name and the position which you hold for the records of this House. Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Honourable Member for St. Michael West.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary and your team. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate you, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, on the job that you have done and the prolific nature in which you have gone about the business of the people of Barbados, dating back to last year with the Mill and Pave program that was implemented ahead of Cricket World Cup. And I want to also add that in the context of the last administration and the fact that virtually no roads were done, the mere fact that, it's not my constituency, but I could drive from Norman Niles all the way through the back roads to the airport and not hit a bad road. Whereas in the past, when you go up Borden Hall, you had to scotch on to the side of the road and let another vehicle pass. So I want to commend you with that. And I'm also very encouraged with your presentation yesterday in terms of using the different technologies applicable to the right situation, especially with the backdrop of climate change. That, along with coordinating with the relevant departments and ministries in order to get it right for Barbadians. And I want to commend you for that. Now, with my first question, it's apparent from my time on the ground that Barbadians look at newly paved roads a little differently now. They're very cynical. So they would tell you, man, I'm glad to hear that you finish our road, boss, but when waterworks come in, you know what's gonna happen. Or, with all the rains and everything, there seems to be a quicker degradation of the roads. So they're a little more cynical. Now, my first question is, everyone here knows what happened with the little boy, the Carrie, when he was trying to cross the road there on President Kennedy Drive, and he was struck by the car. And he came from Westbury Primary. Usually he would come with his older brother, but he got a little ahead of himself and got into trouble. Now, what is more apparent to Barbadians nowadays after that incident is that it's not just about paving a road anymore. People are more concerned about safety. They're concerned about speed bumps. They're concerned about mirrors. They're concerned about crosswalks. In fact, I had a conversation with a lady in my constituency who said, man, the road paved, it's sweet, but it's also going to turn into Indianapolis Speedway. So we have to be mindful that paving the road is nice and it's good, and we all want it done. However, we really need to look at all of the other things that we need to do along with paving the road. Now, I had a conversation with the acting CTO and deputy CTO, and they said that they were looking into that particular area and providing other things that would make it safer for the many children that traverse the two sides of the road. I would like to have an update for my constituents on that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member, and I share your concerns as well in terms of the challenges with road safety. I think none of us would want any of our loved ones to be struck by an oncoming vehicle, and certainly the circumstances in which would have arisen recently have certainly created an even deeper awareness of the urgency to make sure that we are quick on the ball in terms of making sure that all of the roads that are newly paved have the requisite lines, that they have all of the markings that are necessary. That incident is not certainly the catalyst for us acting urgently, but I do feel that the unit in the ministry has always been trying to make sure that when roads are done, there's a system, the road is done, and all of the things attendant to that road will follow thereafter. There are different entities that will then step in from MTW to be able to make sure that the roads are properly marked. I will ask Lorian Graham, who is the Deputy Chief Technical Officer, responsible for road markings, to really get into detail in terms of the transition that the ministry is making from the old type of road markings into some new technology that is perhaps more palatable for not only the workers, but that we hope will also last a bit longer. So I'll call on her just to speak to that first, and then I'll come back in. Ms. Graham?
Good day. My name is Lorian Graham. I'm acting Deputy Chief Technical Officer for Design Services. With regard to road marking in a general sense, the Ministry of Transport and Works makes a consistent effort at the start of each school year and midway through each school year to refresh all school crossings, primary and secondary school crossings across the island. Additionally, as we move through parish by parish, we refresh crossings and road markings. And following new roadworks, as Minister mentioned, we try to reinstate and make clear what rules road traffic is supposed to follow. As you may be aware, over time, some of our road markings have not held up to the wear and tear and the weather. And in this financial year, we are going to trial some different types of road marking materials. Previously, we have used water-based and oil-based road marking paints, and we've also used hot apply thermoplastic. We will be trying to use cold apply thermoplastic to see if it gives the longevity that hot apply thermoplastic previously gave. Additionally, while crossings are necessary road safety features to allow persons to gather and wait for a safe place to cross, we are aware that in urban areas, dense urban areas, there are many points of desire to cross where persons of all ages would not necessarily go to the designated crossing points to go about their daily business. The city of Bridgetown and its environs does have a lower speed limit than the rest of the island, which is currently 60. City of Bridgetown is 45, 40. Over time, we have not replaced those sign discs to make the public aware that in these urban areas, they should be using a reduced speed. So we will be reinstating those sign markings in the area. That is specifically from the Eagle Hall area right across to Jamet's Lane area to allow the traveling public to be aware of what an appropriate speed is in these densely populated areas. Aside from that, we have sought to get quotations on new types of crossing beacons to reinstate that Belisha beacon program to make some of the school crossings more visible. And we are looking at having those also solar powered. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. I think that the crossing beacons, especially on President Kennedy Drive, would be a nice addition. As a supplemental, you mentioned the public service vehicles, and I can't help but think that this is something that is a real issue in the urban environs, because we all know that they take shortcuts, especially through the Bank Hall area, and they drive at breakneck speeds. We had an unfortunate incident with one PSV that struck a child on Rihanna Drive. And I myself, you know, I'm a city businessman, so I find myself in the area a lot walking. And I had to dodge a couple of times the PSVs coming through Literary Row. And it got me to thinking, when you go overseas to the US, and you know you see those trucks, and the backy truck, you have How's My Driving. And on there you have a number, and you call the number. Now, I know we had this conversation yesterday when the Honourable Member for St. Michael, from Christchurch East, mentioned the bugbear of the PSVs in his constituency. And I have to say that 1,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. And if you have this number attached to the back and, you know, people call in and complain about a particular driver, I could tell you that the driver that passed through Literary Road that hit me almost twice, if that number was there, I was calling it. So I would like to, you know, we talk about ideas forum, I would like to recommend that you look at that. Now, to my second question, in the urban area, we have an issue, especially with youth unemployment. And a few times, some young people have come to me and said, boss, I would like to make some extra money. I have a car there that I would like to maybe possibly put into a taxi. And they have absolutely no idea about how to do it. And I couldn't help but think that after the subprime mortgage crisis in the US post-2007, it saw the boom of the ride-share market, where a lot of young people got into ride-share, the ride-share economy, which is Uber and Lyft and those sorts of services. And in their spare time, they would wreck a little job. So I can't help but think that when I was listening to the Honourable Minister of Business, and she mentioned in the presentation that in this modern economy, young people should look for multiple streams of income. And having fielded these numerous requests for how do I get a taxi permit as a young person, I thought that there needs to be a little more transparency in terms of how do I acquire a permit. In addition to that, sometimes when some people apply, a lot of people in my constituency have come to me and said they've been rejected, but they have no idea of why. Now, I know from last estimates, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, you have mentioned that under your tenure, that you've cleaned up a lot of the issues that persisted especially under the last administration. There seemed to be a lot of funny business happening there. But what I want to ask here today is how can we have more transparency in how these permits are being granted? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member. To answer your first question, we are going to be providing a hotline for the general public to be able to call. Not to, as we would say in Beijing parlance, to rat on anybody, but really to highlight both good behaviors and bad behaviors, because this is not intended simply only to call out the bad behaviors, because we have a lot of persons within the PSV sector who have done exceptionally well. A lot of them, even as we try to sensitize the drivers and even the owners of vehicles as to the change that we are attempting to make, many of them have actually come on board and said that they want to be a part of the PR campaign. So while you will hear some say, well, we don't want to train and we don't want to be a part of it, the truth is that the greater number exists of persons who actually want to participate, take pride in what they do, and have been doing it for many, many years, and would actually like to see some level of order brought back to the public transportation sector. In addition to that, as I said yesterday, the sensitization is actually ongoing. We have had a number of persons who have registered. I think about 50 persons so far have actually started the training. There are about 800 persons. If we are able to get the additional classes, we're trying to do 2 classes at the Barbados Community College. If we are able to get those in stream, then we would be in a position by the end of this year to have all of the stakeholders sensitized, with a view then to begin with the use of the hotline as well, to help to start to actually change behavior in the sector. So I am reminding you and this House that it has been 16 years before any level of order has been brought to the sector. To say it has been a runaway train is to be glowing in my comments about what has transpired. But we at the Ministry and certainly Transport Authority, and with the help of the police as well, are determined that we will work with the sector and the stakeholders to continue to sensitize and to make sure that we can turn things around in short order. Your question in relation to permits is one that, as I said yesterday, and perhaps you were not in the chamber when it was raised by another honourable member, but we did address this issue of permits, and I will reiterate again that we view in this government the issuance of permits as a form of enfranchisement to our people. There are many young people who are interested in participating in this sector, and we have determined that we want to encourage them, hence why we have introduced the regulations to make sure that they comply with a certain level of order. And in terms of being able to access the permits, there is a system which is in place in terms of the application procedure, which I will ask Ms. Holder, who's the Director of Transport Authority, to just take you through so that you can see that once persons are aware of it, it's a rather smooth process. Sometimes there are some backlogs because the number of applications are relatively high. But again, I'm sure you can appreciate that there has to be a vetting process. And so in that vetting process, a number of questions are asked about persons in terms of their knowledge, obviously, of the public transportation sector, the rules and regulations, and we determine, obviously, through the Transport Authority, where, I guess, we need, or how many persons we need to be able to augment the Transport Board in terms of their own buses as well, to be able to provide public transportation for the country. So I will ask Ms. Holder just to take us through the step-by-step process so that you are clear and that you can convey that to your constituents as well.
Good morning, Ruth Holder, Director of Transport Authority. In terms of the application process for a taxi permits for taxis, maxi taxis, tour buses, ZRs, and minibuses, the maximum capacity is determined by Cabinet. In October of last year, we got an increase in terms of the number of tour bus permits because we were practically at our highest number. At that point, it was 180. We were at 180 with no more permits available. In relation to persons interested in applying for a permit, you go to Transport Authority's website, you make the application based on the category that you are applying for. If you're applying for any of those permits with any categories that are determined by Cabinet, you have to go, the person undergoes an interview. The interview process is done by a panel of directors of the Transport Board. That panel, based, as the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, they ask you a series of questions, and based on the responses, the determination is made at that point in time, either yea or nay. Those applicants, the determination actually goes over then to the board, who ratifies the decisions of the committee. If it is a yes, the person gets an approval letter, or office contacts the person. If it is no, Transport Authority responds to that person indicating the reason why the permit has not been issued. So it's not that you just send a blank letter saying you've been denied. We inform you as to the reason for your denial. As you can appreciate and general public can appreciate, we do have to scrutinize people. The only way, in our view, as it is right now, that we can determine who is fit and capable is by an interview process. It's similar to a job. You have a job fair and 200 people show up. So you have to go through the vetting process to make that determination. There are a number of people who apply on a monthly basis, and it's a task. Our committee, we meet every Tuesday and Thursdays between 2 and 4:30 to try to do some interviews. And then on one Saturday per month from 9 until 4:30, we do mass interviews. So I hope that does answer your question. But what I want to say to you in relation to those public service vehicles that you see coming through Bank Hall and speeding, et cetera, if you can only share that information with Transport Authority. The insurance companies know that we take action. The Permanent Secretary knows we take action. The Commissioner of Police knows that we're taking action and know what action that we're taking. But we can only take the action if you share the information with us. If we have the information, then we can reach out to the owners, and the owners as well know that we take action. So we do take action as we see fit based on the parameters that we have available to us. So if you can share that information with us, it would help. Not only us, but the general public. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And for my last question, my apologies to you, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. I had to leave yesterday because I had a fire in the constituency. So this last question is on drainage. So I know that the Honourable Member from St. Michael North might have touched on some of these issues yesterday, but I'm being a bit parochial now in my question. Obviously, in the urban area, there's a very intricate network of canals. And quite frequently they become blocked up. And I do appreciate what you mentioned yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister, that sometimes individuals are guilty of polluting in their own environs, and we really need to engage in education and PSAs to try to curb that behavior. So I do appreciate that. However, there are many times when there are issues, environmental issues, rainfall, the trees shed, different things happen that from time to time would clog the network. The issue that we have in the St. Michael West area is that this happens quite frequently. Now, we all would have remembered Hurricane Katrina and what that did to New Orleans. And given that climate change is real, and we don't want to ever have a situation where people be forced out of their homes because of an event. So my question is there a methodical way in which the ministry approaches checking on the canal system so that we keep that system clear, especially when we're coming up to hurricane season?
Thanks, Honourable Member. I'll ask Mr. Andre Bryce, the Head of Drainage, to just respond to you on the maintenance program within the ministry for the checking of those areas.
Good morning. My name is Andre Bryce. I'm the STO acting in the drainage unit. Usually when coming up to the rainy season, members of our staff, we go out and do investigations on drainage structures within known flood-prone areas. Any maintenance issues that are identified that needs to be done are scheduled and carried out in a timely manner. Before the rainy season, we identify outfall drains and water courses that needs to be cleared. Those are dealt with. And any wells and any drains that required maintenance are dealt with as well.
Mr. Bryce, as a follow-up to that, this is a specific question. Mm-hmm. When you come off of Bank Hall Cross Road to Progressive Road, that part of the canal has not been completed, so there are issues with flooding in that particular area. And the constituents want to know when that particular section will be completed. Thank you.
This is drainage work that was not completed, that's what you're saying? But I have to investigate that. Within the beginning of the next financial year, we will deal with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to express appreciation to the team for what I've heard. It is very encouraging that we are not only using technology, new materials and so on to improve what we're doing in terms of road works. My issue pertains to drainage in St. James South. We still have some lingering issues emanating from the dust from the St. Vincent situation, where there have been some drains that have not been adequately cleared, and therefore there is a lot of flooding that takes place in those areas. In Durance, for example, we have significant problems with the water that comes down from St. Thomas and higher up, coming down. The wells are choked, they overflow, I have houses where there's at least half a foot, the water comes up at least half a foot of the house itself, simply because of the amount of water that is coming down and the wells not being able to adequately manage the water quickly. So I'm eager to hear what solutions you all are going to be putting in place to do that. In addition, I still have a number of uncovered wells. I know some of them are private, but the owners are no longer living there, they're overseas, they don't care, and so on. And I have a couple of wells that the children tend to pass that way. And you know how it is with children, they're curious. And therefore, my deep concern is about people falling into the wells. So I just want to hear what is the program for drainage and wells and so on. And I know things take time because it's a lot that you're doing and you're stretching the resources. So I just want to get an idea of when we'll be able to see an improvement in relation to things like the drains, the wells, and so on to cope with flooding and the dangers to the population.
Thank you, Minister. I think you can appreciate that the concerns that are raised in respect of things that are urgent, we try to respond to the public as quickly as possible. I would have indicated yesterday, there are some constraints, in terms of capacity at times, which is why the model that we are pushing for this next financial year is one where the department in drainage would actually focus on the core areas that it can manage and manage those well, while at the same time being able to outsource a number of the areas that would perhaps give us now a quicker response. I tried to compare yesterday the highway beautification project, for instance. We had a lot of complaints about bush along many of our highways and along the road network. It was clear that based on the capacity issues of the various depots that we were not accomplishing the type of cleaning that was necessary. And a better coordinated approach obviously was needed in order to be able to address it. So hence, we determined that we would keep certain things as core within the ministry, and everything else basically would be outsourced to the private sector and to young entrepreneurs to be able to assist us with cleaning certain kilometers of the roadway. Drainage is no different. The approach going forward is a recognition that we simply do not have the capacity to deliver on the magnitude of the problems that we have. Equally, we have to work within the budget sometimes that we are given. And while we know that the issues of flooding are clearly a major problem for the island, we have ensured that the new direction will be one which will see a parallel track running for the ministry with the private sector being overseen by the ministry in the execution of the works program. I will ask Mr. Bryce again to just go into more details in terms of the specifics of the teams. You know that we have contract workers who are assigned to the drainage unit. They have specific locations that they clean, but what we are envisaging is additional stretches of drains that are identified for smaller contractors to be responsible for. And that way we can just simply from the ministry's end identify the scope of the works to be done and ensure obviously that those persons execute those works according to the standards of the ministry. It is my hope that that will allow us to be able to address the emergency situations while at the same time being able to start to address the maintenance that needs to take place across all of the various districts. So Mr. Bryce, you can perhaps just go into more detail on the actual functions of drainage.
Yes, as I mentioned yesterday, currently our well contract, where we contract private contractors to go out and do any well works that's required, that contract is ended and we are now in the position, in the situation of putting the contract back into place. So I'm looking forward to that contract starting in April at the beginning of the financial year. Currently, our staff is out doing surveys on wells which we prioritize into 3 categories, which is, one, which is posing danger to the public, which is wells that are uncovered, broken grills, that kind of things. Two, the wells that cause flooding. So that's on priority 2. And the next one is the wells that just nuisance flooding. So the priority one wells is what we address first. So our teams are out there doing surveys on those wells. We quarter off those wells and cover them when we have covers available. To address those wells in the coming financial year when the contracts open back.
Sorry, part of my emphasis is on, I know that technically you all are not responsible for private wells. That's the responsibility of the homeowners. Unfortunately, we are not getting people taking responsibility for their own. So along with the public wells that might be broken, as I was sharing, I have some where people started building, they didn't finish build. The well over time became broken, is now a hazard to the general public and things like that. Will you all be able to accommodate, or how would we be able to deal with the both public and private wells? Will you all be able to accommodate the private wells within your program? That's really what I was trying to get at.
I would allow the CTO to answer that question.
Chair, if you allow me, I'll speak to this question. Dave Scantlebury, Acting Chief Technical Officer at MTW. The Prevention of Flooding Act allows us to go into private property and to deal with wells, especially in cases where there is great danger. Generally, you have to give a house owner about 14 days before you go on, as well as notice by affidavit. However, in a case such as what I'm hearing right now, we can go right in and do the work that is necessary. However, they pay at our cost, and it would have to be reimbursed by the house owner or the property owner at a later date. Thank you.
Okay,
And just to add to what Mr. Scantlebury has said, the prevention of floods legislation, as its name suggests, is quite outdated. And we actually have on the order paper, in fact, a draft of the stormwater management bill. And this bill now takes into account and certainly increases the fines and the penalties and the powers of the drainage unit to be able to manage the concerns that you've raised in relation to private homes where the wells are obviously exposed. Obviously, trying to use old legislation becomes very problematic because while the act or the omission is covered in it, the penalties often, or even the levels of enforcement, are not there to give the officers the teeth that is needed to really, do their job. And so we have the bill. We hope to be able to debate it after the budget with a view to being able to give the necessary powers now to the ministry to be able to be more effective in this area.
Thank you. And my last question is an observation. I don't know if this is on your agenda. Barbados is a developing country that is moving from different levels of development. And with it, it means that citizens have to improve or change the way they engage a space. We know that in developed countries, for example, you have to clean outside of your door. You have to make sure that you shovel your snow, that you put out the garbage at the right time, that there's certain disciplines that have to be built into the population as you seek to move to higher and higher levels of development. We are having a struggle, whether it is with garbage that impacts on flooding and so on, or people not taking care of their property or not dealing with their wells. What are we doing? I know this might be something that goes across a number of ministries, but what are we doing in terms of doing the education along with the legislation, the education to help citizens to understand that they need to do specific things as well. Because more and more, that same citizen is believing that the government should do it, not understanding that the cost is prohibitive when the government has to do it, as opposed to the individual citizen being disciplined and taking responsibility. So I just want to know what we're doing to help bring our population along in their education and civic behaviors.
I think your question really speaks to a wider issue within the ministry of how do we deal with educating people generally about not just the issue of littering and its impact on the environment, but generally how do we educate the public about, for instance, road infrastructure or bridge infrastructure, and what are the differences? Because I hear a lot of people commenting, and I appreciate the enthusiasm to try to be knowledgeable on the area of roads and infrastructure. But the truth of the matter is, those are things where you are observing what is happening and you may have an opinion, but the truth is a lot of the detail is with the technical people in terms of why decisions are actually made. We have made some effort, I think, in the last year trying to promote and to educate the public about what the ministry does. And also how certain behaviors impact on the ministry as well. So you are perfectly correct that it is a multifaceted approach that would have to be taken in terms of various ministries. Ministry of the Environment certainly will have to be involved, and in particular the Sanitation Service Authority. We've already had our discussions with them, and in this financial year, we intend to strengthen the communications department of the ministry. There's a program already that we had done earlier last year on the drainage unit, showing the types of debris that is pulled often from our drains. The truth of the matter is that doesn't come from any one household, but it comes from an accumulation of households that have improperly disposed of their garbage. Or in some cases, we see people just throwing things indiscriminately out through a car window, not understanding and appreciating the impact that that is going to have on the environment. So we've started a series of programs called Transport in Motion, which looks at not just road infrastructure, it looks at the drainage, it looks at public transportation in an effort to start to tell the story about the things that MTW is doing, but also, as I said, the impact that people's behaviors have on the roads as well and on the infrastructure in the country. And the things that make the work of the drainage unit in particular even more difficult as well. Now, that is not to say that we as a government don't have our own responsibilities to make sure that drainage infrastructure is appropriately done. But what we do find is that a lot of the items that are pulled are clearly coming from households. And we want in this next financial year to be able to create additional programs and public awareness that would allow everybody to realize that they have a stake in keeping the country clean, in working with the drainage unit to make sure that they clean and clear their drains as much as possible, and of course to alert us where there are certain challenges so that we can mitigate the impact of flooding in various communities. So that is definitely on the cards for the next financial year to ramp up the programs, and I'm hopeful that we can also do a program which would look at the infrastructure now in a different way, because as I said earlier, what we find is that there's a lot of misinformation, and in some cases people inform themselves about things that they often do not know. Certainly coming to this office, I think I can speak for the parliamentary secretary and myself, we have learned a lot from the technical team, and I appreciate the fact that I came as a blank slate, but I believe that I will take away from this ministry a lot of knowledge about the infrastructure of Barbados, and I think all of the ministers who preceded me will say that as well. What is required, though, if we are to preserve and protect the infrastructure is allowing the entire Barbadian population to buy into what is required so that we have a whole of country approach in improving the infrastructure. So it starts with the staff, it starts with improving our responses to the people, it starts with improving our service delivery, it starts with making sure that we are fit for purpose, but it also requires us, once we do all of those things, to work hand in hand with the general public to achieve the objectives of the ministry.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everybody. Minister, I am going to concentrate, hopefully, exclusively on parochial matters in St. Michael's East. I'm a constituent there, and I'm also a privileged man to be able to represent the people in a place from which I've sprung. I'm very passionate about this community and would love to leave a legacy that I've contributed to the transformation of this old plantation pocket in the city, in the parish of St. Michael's, called St. Michael's East, but also a large percentage of the land space is an old plantation that used to belong to the royal family and the Lassells in England. When this black man left Parliament, I must be able, even in my grave, to communicate with the living forces and to know that they respect me for the work that I've done. First of all, it is an extremely dark area. Dark in the perception of the general public of Barbados, and also dark in terms of the environment in which the village exists. Even the term village seemed to perpetuate the immediate lineage of that plantation history. Madam, I would like the Ministry of Transport and Works to also prioritize the installation of lights across this entire area. The Milor's Hill area serves as a buffer area. If you look at Milor's Hill, the straight road going up to St. George, you would not be fully capable of drawing a perception of the distinction of what is on the main road at Milor's Hill and the other communities to Licorice Village. And I would love you to work with me hand in hand. We got some mischievous people down there spreading propaganda too, and I'm told that they were sent. I would like you to share with me the efforts in transforming this area into a more urbanized type of community. So that's why I'm asking, how soon can you assure me that with this kind of view about Licorice Village, that you can install a number of lights across the village itself? No need for me to tell you all the social challenges that we are experiencing there. And what is well known in government, hopefully by technical officers and administrative staff, as well in MTW, is that sometimes we need to put lights within those specific areas. I understand the rule, Mr. Chairman, but you know, sometimes life requires more than simple sentences. as short speeches. So, Madam Minister, kindly, I hope that I'm clear enough. I'll try to put some coloring around it, deliberately to bring clarity to my major concerns. I would love to be able to explain the other social challenges which I have in order to rationalize the demand, the urgent demand for the lighting inside this specific area.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will say to you that you need to focus on what you are doing as opposed to what others may be trying to create mischief in your area about, and I will leave that there. To your question regarding streetlights, I would have indicated that we have currently in the estimates the sum of $2.5 million, which is a significant reduction from what is accustomed to be included in the estimates. Usually it's around $6 million that is expended on streetlight infrastructure. We've drawn that to the Ministry of Finance's attention, and I'm hopeful that by the end of these estimates that we're in a position to see the move in relation to taking that number back up. And why, Honourable Member, is because we recognize, like you do, that the number of requests that we get for streetlights and the attendant issues that arise from us not being able to respond to the requests in turn causes issues in relation to crime and other social issues which you are quite familiar with. And therefore, we want to be in a position to be able to continue the works plan with the Barbados Light and Power to be able to install a number of the streetlight requests that we have received across all constituencies. One of the things that we have started to focus on is wherever we are doing new roads and new infrastructure to work with our utilities coordinator and the utility company to ensure that those roads are allocated the necessary street infrastructure. It still means that in the residential areas of which you've spoken, there is still a dire need for streetlight infrastructure. And I would also have mentioned yesterday the donation of solar lights that has been received. The first batch has been received from the People's Republic of China, and the second batch is currently in the port. And it is our intention as a government to also, once these lights work for the purpose of what we have intended, to explore with the Chinese government the possibility of being able to procure additional lights that will actually help us to light our communities. So we're in the pilot phase of the lights, the 430 solar lamps and poles that have been donated graciously by the People's Republic of China. But the second phase is to ensure that if these work, they may actually hold the solution to helping us to accelerate the constant requests that we get to light poorly lit communities and certainly our city center areas. So just like you in St. Michael Southeast, I share the similar concerns. Densely populated areas, I believe, require a different level of intervention than some other areas. And we are certainly hopeful that the solar light program may be able to address the concerns that many of you have in relation to the streetlight infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I know you're a woman of your word, and what you say you mean. I take from the question that specific area within St. Michael East would be one of the early beneficiaries of the funds that are available this year. And I really genuinely believe that, because I've had other ministers here who promised me for decades to put in other amenities in the community. Unfortunately, water is one of those, but I'll speak to that. Hopefully I get an opportunity in these estimates to speak to the issue of water in the belt. But I know it is not relevant, even though I can try to justify it. Look, the Bell people work or sacrifice their lives more than probably most of you can even imagine, unless you are students of history. I'm not talking about colonial students of history, but more modern history, which have been written by our own people about us. And also permit me, sir, before I put the question, to recognize the contribution to the development of my community through the agency of MTW that the Honourable Member of West Central made to that transformation. Now, the Minister, Madam, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to dwell on what I call traditions or unorthodox analysis. I believe that I am entitled as a parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East, even though you seem to be suggesting that you box in everybody when they want to answer a question, right? I don't know if you can hear
Honourable Member.
Hear you, sir.
I do not appreciate that phrase. I am not boxing in anybody.
Well,
we are abiding by the standing orders of the House, and I want you to, so I'm trying to give you the opportunity to raise all the questions you have, but we have time constraints, there's rules of the House, and I want you to so abide by them.
Well, I don't believe that I would exceed the time that is
But I have a clock that I'm watching, and you're already there. So I want you to get to the question respectfully. Get to your question, because if you, I've said that if you speak for 3 minutes, you can't speak for 3 to 5 minutes and then get to answer the question too, because you still have we still have time constraints, and you have to hold on, Honourable Member, and you have to understand that the officers have to be given time as well to explain or to respond to you in a satisfactory way, because I'm sure that if they do not respond to you in a satisfactory way, you will come back with other questions which we wouldn't have the time for. So I am giving you the opportunity to do, and I'm asking you to work with the chair.
I will work with you, sir, but I hope that you will also not reduce the time available to me because of how long you spoke to me. Sir, I'm just saying that in order for you to understand why some communities, the people, at the end of the day, you look at the physical environment, the external environment, but many times you come to a conclusion about the character of the people that live within the environment because you see the physical features. So I'm saying that I'm trying to change the physical features there so that I will get an opportunity during my time to also change the public's view about the character of the individuals who live within the area. Sometimes titles, and that is why we changed Petty Hole in St. Philip and found a different name for it. And I can cite examples. All I'm asking, sir, is that, all right, let me go straight. Minister, there is a link road, unpaved, with large boulders protruding upward. People stamp their toes. People suffer with all kind of, we call it stone bruises, on their feet because they have to walk a long distance from the bottom, the western side of Licorice Village, and they have to come right up the train line. We have actually given people the privilege to upgrade a specific area of the train line. I don't know what role the ministry played, but I am now asking that that part of the train line that comes from Licorice Village, straight up to the standpipe, up to the east, which is Bell Gully, that we now pave that entire road, and all the additional amenities will come along. But I have been here for a long time, and I've been promised that this physical transformation would occur. And I believe that the physical transformation will also help in transforming the character, the public's view of the character of people who live in that community. So I'm asking the minister if she does not feel, if she feels the same way that I feel in relation to changing the physical environment in order I can also change the general public's perspective of the community itself.
Honourable Member, you're asking me if I feel the same way you do. I feel passionate about my people in the same way you do. I feel passionate about building out the infrastructure across the country in an orderly and systematic way. So I think there's consensus in terms of those feelings. As it relates to the area that you mentioned, I can only speak for my knowledge in terms of being in this position. It has certainly not been raised with me previously. Now that it has in this forum, I will certainly ask for the officers to assess that particular area to determine what can be done, as I do when any other member of parliament or any other person in the various communities raise with me a road or an area or anything of concern. I try to go to the technical teams and seek their consult in terms of what we can do and not do. So I regret that you have not had the response perhaps that you deserve and that you can relay that to the people of your constituency. But certainly know that you have raised it in this forum. I will certainly ask the team to take a look at that road and would be more than happy to join you in the exercise of actually taking a look and helping to determine where we place that. We are doing a number of other roads in your constituency under the current program before the end of this financial year. And we are working through those because we did a few during the mill and pave last year as well. In terms of sharing the resources, I would have said, and will reiterate here, that with 30 constituencies, we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing where we apply those resources, bar the fact that in some areas, for instance, the Scotland district, they have taken more of a drain on the resources of the budget for infrastructure in this ministry than any other corridor. And so while we are working right now to be able to address the St. Michael roads under the Focus Roads program and some of the others that would not have had attention under the Scotland District project because those designs are obviously in progress, I can assure you that we are trying to level the playing field whereby your constituency certainly is on our radar to make sure that you have a few roads done and that the infrastructural improvements are made over the course of this next financial year.
Thank you, Madam Minister. The final question. Yesterday, I heard a lot about using specific type of materials in order to harden the surfaces of roads. I know sometimes we have a lot of diverse opinions on these things, but this government was on a path since the 1990s of introducing concrete roads all across the various territories, especially in urban Barbados, what also influenced the thinking of the leadership at that specific time, former Prime Minister Owen Arthur, was the need to transform all these tracks and things across Barbados. We know how these things evolve over the years, and we decided to use concrete rather than asphalt in order to construct footpaths, right-of-ways to lands that were sangrage internally, and I believe that program was successful. I don't know what is the issue now in relation to reverting to that kind of program. But I think that I have a concrete road in Barkers, and there's no difference between that concrete road and roads made out of asphalt or what we used to call tar and grit on the service of the road. So I'm just asking if it is the government's intention to reintroduce, because I would love to see it continue, but to reintroduce the concrete road program across urban Barbados, served women well because many of them were able to save the high heel 3 and 4 or 5 inch soles and heels on their feet. I would be grateful, Madam Chair, if you, on the behalf of the women of Barbados, especially in my community, that you would make sure that they can walk from their homes to their cars or to the front road. If you introduce that, it also helps the cement plant. But the cement plant was struggling at that specific time, and the Prime Minister said in order to sustain the cement plant and keep it going, he feel that we should use as much cement as well from the concrete plant here, since it was perceived as a local, it was Trinidadian investment, but he felt that it was necessary to also do that, and it worked well. It did work well for the ramps as well for the disabled community.
Thank you, Honourable Member. 2 things I think arise from that. The first is there's a community access road transformation program where we have been across the country using the material that has been milled off of the roads from the various projects, stockpiling that material and reusing it to be able to construct what we call the short roads, which is exactly roads where people have the difficulty gaining access from the main road into their houses. One of the challenges with the program, though, has been, in some cases, trying to ascertain ownership of the land. And as you can appreciate, unless it is a clear case where we can actually go in and start to do the work, we can also run ourselves into challenges with regards to land ownership. So before we can agree that once you identify the road, again, assessments have to be done. Those questions need to be answered. And once they are answered in the affirmative, a decision is taken whether we can pursue the CART road program or whether we can do it under the roller compacted concrete or even the normal concrete roads. In recent times, we haven't done the concrete roads, just the strict concrete roads. We've actually, because of climate change, we've moved to technologies which perhaps give us greater resilience. As you know, concrete is a bit more expensive than putting down strict asphalt, but we have recognized the benefit of having a 2-pronged approach in the ministry, whereby in addition to asphalt, we are actually each year introducing RCC into the works program. So the first thing I will say to you is if there are specific roads that you would wish to identify beyond the ones that you've already indicated to our offices, I would suggest that you highlight those and allow us to do an assessment so that for this next financial year that we can work you into either the CART program or into a program for asphalt or RCC. The paving unit as well has the capacity to be able to pave a number of roads once we work with the larger contractors to mill the roads, because they're the ones who have the milling machines. And so once we can coordinate that road fits the criteria, it should be no problem in terms of getting it done or placed within the schedule to have it done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'd permit, one of my questions is broader, and then 2 of my questions are more related to
one
the
of your questions
is broader, and one is more related to the constituency that I represent. And if you would permit me that latitude, I will seek to do so.
Once it fits within the criteria under this ministry.
It absolutely does.
That's
absolutely
no
does. Thank
proceed,
you, Mr.
but
Chairman.
you may proceed, but keep it tight.
Absolutely, will do so. I'm going to start with the broader issue, Mr. Chairman. And first, I want to thank the Transport Board for the conversations it has started to have with the ministry with regards to the possibility of having staggered hours for schools and how that could impact transportation in the country. In that regard also, with regards to transportation for schools, my question is about the augmented capacity. Is there any opportunity for augmented capacity for the transport of students who have to go to special needs schools? While we are making additional spaces, while we are seeking to add additional resources to those schools that will take students with special needs, even those that are non-governmental, our concern is that a number of parents are telling us they can't get their children from home to the schools. So they may have room at the schools, they can get into the schools, but the problem is those students cannot travel on the regular transport system. And so my question is, what capacity, extra capacity do you have to assist us in getting more of those students who need to get to special needs school, to get them there on time?
All right, I'll take the first question that you've raised in relation to the staggered school hours. Certainly when I was minister, this was a front burner issue in relation to beginning the process of staggering school hours, because we recognized that the traffic on the road was particularly high in the early morning period. And for children getting to school, it was very problematic, as well as even some of the adults trying to get to their workplaces. One of the things that we did then was we started to look at having dedicated school buses, working with the school system, with the ministry. Transport Board had worked with us well in order to be able to make those changes. I believe now we have Lodge, St. Michael's School, and QC, who are the schools that presently start before 9 a.m. And we initiated a pilot back then to be able to determine the effectiveness of being able to make that transition. Obviously, there are a number of factors that go into making that change. Obviously, the consultation with the parents, the willingness of the principals and the teachers, and our engagement with the unions as well to make that change. But we have certainly seen the benefit for those schools where the hours are before 9 a.m. for a start, in terms of the ease of traffic in what we considered highly trafficked areas of the country. Apart from Harrison College, that is the only school that we do not currently provide a dedicated school bus to. And our discussions, I believe, for this coming financial year will be with your ministry in relation to extending the pilot to something more permanent for the rest of these schools across the island. And so we look forward to having those discussions as to how it can be done, obviously with the additional complement of buses coming hopefully by May. We should be in a position to see a better rerouting of our buses and a more reliable service. And by the end of this year, certainly by December, it is our hope that we will have the additional 31 buses added to the complement that would allow for us to allocate the resources even better for the school system as well. It has always been the case that we've tried to prioritize our school children. I think we went through a period where our children were like almost left on the side of the road on mornings and on afternoons. And with great effort and commitment from both the ministry and Transport Board, I can say that we have dedicated the resources to make our children in this country a priority to get to school. Obviously, the TAP program allowed for the supplementing of the Transport Board buses, and we will continue to ramp that up, obviously, to allocate the resources accordingly. But in the next financial year, those discussions definitely will commence with the country and the various stakeholders with a view to looking at how we can stagger school times to allow our children to go into school earlier, but also in some cases to encourage the earlier end of school for our students as well. One of the things, Minister, though, that I also felt, and I'll just share this because I think that this will certainly come up in our discussions, is that we needed to be able to have more extracurricular activities taking place at the schools, which would allow perhaps a later pickup time in some cases for our students. And I would hope that we can work with the educational system to be able to explore how we can do so that we can get the working public off the road as quickly as possible, but equally then be able to make a quick turnaround to be able to have the school children also removed from the educational institutions. So that, I think, answers your first question, but I will also ask Ms. Linda Holder, Chief Operations Officer of the Transport Board, perhaps just to speak a little bit wider to the discussions and the works that have been made thus far in progressing this issue of staggered school times.
Good morning, Linda Holder, Chief Operations Officer of the Transport Board. As it relates to the staggered school times, we have started conversation with the Chief Education Officer and explained to her the benefit to the public transport system, the school children themselves, and everyone else on the roads as to what would occur if we could get times for schools not to all start at 9 a.m. We understand that that would be leading to greater productivity on the island, and she agrees with that, so we have started that discussion. A couple of years ago, we would have had lodge schools starting a little bit earlier, and that allowed us to start gaining some information on what that would mean for the rest of the traveling public. Once that happens, you will see a slight shift in the traffic congestion on the road, and we are aiming to work with the ministry to see how best we can achieve that for all. The second point, the call-a-ride system, which is what we call it internally, caters to the students with special needs. We have been in discussion on that as well, and as the DPM articulated, with the arrival of some additional resources, we will be able to make that a more efficient system. Presently, we supply services to most, if not all, of the special needs schools. We actually supply services to Lifetime Learning, which is for young adults. We also supply transportation to Ellerton Special Needs, Erdeston Special Needs, the Derek Smith School, the Ann Hill School, Charles F. Broom Special Needs, and the Chalmers School. And we move these students around during the day, as long as they're at school, and then we also do some external activities with them. But it is, of course, a case of capacity. So once we have some additional resources, we will then be able to improve on that. I hope I have answered your query. Thank you.
Yes, it tells me that help is coming. And so thank you very much for that. Mr. Chairman, I'd now like to address my other question to St. Philip West situation. Now, as you know, Minister, through you, Chair, Woodburn has been a flood-prone area for as long as we can imagine. Many attempted fixes have been done over time, including over the last couple of years where we have really lessened some of the flooding in some areas, but the truth is that we need a more permanent fix. Now, the community, we met as a community, and a proposal was submitted to the ministry. And in fact, I believe it was at one of the Community Speaks events that a proposal was given. Minister, I know that you said that some consideration had been given to that within the ministry, and that there was some provision for short, medium, and long-term plans. And I'd be very interested to find out when can we expect some relief, given that we've provided the solution. I believe it's been costed, I don't know. And so when can we get some relief? in that area.
Thank you, Minister. As I stated before, we received correspondence, first of all, from the residents of Woodburn, following certainly your representations as well to the ministry. And we directed that correspondence, which contained a very detailed report of recommendations from an engineer. And we shared those with the Drainage Department. They were able to review and to start the process of dealing with the short-term challenges and issues that needed to be addressed. I will ask Mr. Bryce, however, to perhaps just provide a more technical response in terms of what efforts are actually being made, both in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And just to assure you that in these estimates, again, the approach going forward is one where a number of these matters that are raised that have been on the agenda for a long time that have not been dealt with frontally, that we are seeking to have assessments done with a view to them being able to place the costings within the roadworks program going forward. So hence why Woodburn it has been prioritized rather, because it was on the radar. We recognize it was on the radar for a long time, and we determined that efforts had to be made to go in and actually start to deal with this issue, because too many of these issues have just been in this ministry for far too long and have been causing tremendous frustration to residents. We've seen the impact as well in many of these communities as a result of the flooding, the water levels rising, and also creating problems for households, flooding out households. But I must say to you that, and maybe not just in relation to Woodburn, but what we have also seen in terms of our observation is that homeowners as well have also encroached on drainage infrastructure. And it would be remiss of me if I did not mention that, because I have seen it personally in some of the communities where people have complained about us not cleaning an area or dealing with the infrastructure. There has also been a very clear examples provided of persons not following, whether it's the planning and planning, town and country planning recommendations, and creating difficult challenges for the ministry, because in some cases we cannot even get to the infrastructure to be able to address it. Again, the legislation that is coming will tighten the approach that the ministry can take and allow the officers to have more teeth to serve notice on persons, so that they are given a period of time within which they will have to address the issue. If not, the ministry will step in and correct the issue for the benefit of all of the residents, with a view to being able to seek compensation back from the individual offender. So I'll ask Mr. Bryce just to speak specifically to the Woodburn area and the challenges that we are seeing there and the solutions that we have found as well.
Okay, my name is Mr. Bryce, as I mentioned before, as Senior Technical Officer in Drainage Department. We received the correspondence from the residents from Woodburn in regards of solutions to the flooding problems. We reviewed it and we agreed with the recommendations. So what we are doing, we're going forward in a three-phase step approach. The first stage is to deal with, identify the, they mentioned 6 wells within, that would be north of Woodburn in the Caneground area, right? So we will identify those and address those while cleaning them, regrading the land so the waters will run to the wells itself. The second phase will include land acquisition, and this land acquisition would be for the introduction of detention and retention ponds in the same lands above Woodburn to retain the water that runs across, that is from the rum factory, to prevent the water from getting into Woodburn. So that the second phase will be the land acquisition phase, and the third phase will be actually the construction of the retention ponds, the detention ponds that is needed within that area, or any introduction of any wells that are needed. So that'd be the 3 steps that will be taken for Woodburn. The first stage, we are looking to start in the beginning of the financial year, which will be the cleaning the wells, maintaining the wells, reconstruction of the wells, that kind of thing. And then the second stage will follow after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I have my third question very quickly? Thank you. The final question relates to roads in the constituency. And I have to say, first of all, thank you for the road at Cottageville, which nearly 40 years later, we are finally being able to address. So thank you to the team. I am not unreasonable in thinking that all roads can be done, but where the residents themselves were not responsible for some of the damage to the roads. Where there was, for example, on that road, the Charnox Road that goes from the St. Patrick's roundabout all the way through Charnox to the other side, where when the trucks from Windham came to dispose of the debris from Windham, parts of the road that was already not well became even more unsafe for persons to travel. And it is therefore, as I said, I am not a greedy person, but it is certainly that road that I'm saying the people did not destroy it. It was destroyed by works that was being done by others. Is there any scope in any flexibility for that road to be considered at this time? Because there are school children from the Gordon Walters School that are there. There are dangerous turns. There's also the nurseries across there, and we are finding that we are having an increasing difficulty where the road is so bad the children either have to jump in the grass when the rain falls or when cars are coming, and there is really no sidewalk. There is no scope for that road now to remain safe.
I think, Honourable Member, when we would have done our checks of that particular road, it is one of those roads that was put into the CAF program and then subsequently taken out. I really can't speak to deterioration caused as a result of the construction at Windham. That is not certainly what the technical team have also indicated to me. But I think more to your point is that the road is now in a position where it requires some attention. And while we are doing Cottageville in your constituency at this present moment, which is the road that has not been done for about 40 years, I assure you that we can certainly assess this road. And if we do, the truth is that it sounds as though, based on your comments, that it is a road that is likely to require sidewalks to be put in and possibly drainage infrastructure, which, as you can appreciate, will take some time to have it designed. So I know that we have plans in this financial year for another road in cutting across your constituency, which is Congo Road.
Farm Road, Congo Road.
Farm Road, Congo Road, which I'm told is perhaps in a worse condition, and which we have already gone out to tender for. There were a number of roads in this financial year that we determined would be prioritized for the next financial year, and that particular road is also on the radar for reconstruction of the road to be done in the next financial year. So I will place the roundabout from St. Patrick's to Charnock certainly on the list, but appreciate and please convey to the residents in the area that we would not certainly be able to start the work on that immediately. What I can ask the team to do is to perhaps take a look at the road and see if we can do any remedial work on it as an interim measure before we actually are at the stage where we can do full reconstruction of the road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my questions.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. You may recall, sir, when you were minister in this ministry, that we were requested to submit for consideration of the ministry at that time some roads that we felt were of priority for repair and reconstruction across our various constituencies. And at that time, I recall very clearly submitting 2 specific roads. One was to repair Water Street and to install sidewalks, sir, between Milton Lynch and Christchurch Girls, because up until that point, children literally had to walk in the road to get to school safely. And the other, sir, road that I requested of the ministry was Highway T. And for the benefit of the chamber, sir, you would recall that Highway T is the road, it's commonly known as Lodge Road, but it leads from Henry Ford roundabout at Newton all the way down to Oistins. And anybody that knows that road, sir, knows that on evenings, in particular, the workers, as they exit their work from Newton Industrial Park, would equally walk down Lodge Road, as it is called, in the road, whilst the traffic, and anybody knows that road, the traffic on that road is significant, given that it is a leading artery with respect to the transit of people to the south. You will recall, sir, that the request to deal with Water Street, as you may recall, sir, was done when you were there. Now, I raised this in particular because it was told at the time, sir, that Lodge Road would be placed under the CAF program, which I understand the mechanism quite clearly. And each year, as Minister responsible for Finance, I've given this ministry more resources under the CAF program to be able to accelerate works, actually more money than would have been requested. And I focus on this very clearly, sir, because once I listened to the minister respond, because I came into the chamber as she was responding to the honourable member for St. Michael East. In the course of the last, is a little more than 18 months now, sir, 2 persons have died, lost their lives, actually, in vehicular accidents on Lodge Road. The first incident, sir, accident, sorry, the driver was a constituent, not too far from my constituency office on the way up. The second instance, sir, the person killed was a constituent, and that constituent, sir, was walking up Lodge Road on the right-hand side. Now, coincidentally, sir, the person was struck from behind. So imagine cars are supposed to be driving on the left-hand side of the road. The gentleman is walking on the right-hand side of the road. I don't know what happened, but it was a hit and run. And up until this point, there's been no person found responsible with respect to those deaths, to that particular death, sorry. I raised this matter with the ministry as a matter of public safety. To date, none of the residents in Lodge Road can be comforted by the response of the ministry. So I have a simple question to ask this ministry. How many more people have to die walking on Lodge Road before this ministry can address a very serious matter of public safety? And the request was simple: repair the road, install sidewalks on both sides of Lodge Road, Highway T. This was since 2020. And nothing has happened on Lodge Road. So how many more persons have to die for this to receive the attention of this ministry? That's my first question.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think you are also well aware that the CAF funds are from a budgeted sum, which we draw down from each financial year to be able to execute the works for roads that require full reconstruction. The fact that Lodge Road was in fact placed under this particular head, I think should suggest to you and others that it would have required full design in order to be able to address issues of drainage, of the sidewalks, and in some cases you can't build sidewalks unless you get acquisitions of land. I traverse that road quite frequently to get from the South Coast to the highway. And I can tell you that to even start to either widen the road to take into account the sidewalks, or to start to do any of the works on that road is going to require the surveys to be done in order to ensure that we are not encroaching on anyone's property, or that we have the conversations with persons to be able to remove their boundary walls in order to put in the necessary infrastructure. In essence, what is required for Lodge Road is really a design and build. And I can tell you, during the Mill and Pave program, we had looked at that road as a priority road to be placed on the Mill and Pave. The challenge came, however, when we realized the amount of work that was going to be required in order to be able to place it within that program, and it simply was not possible to place it there. We are at the stage now where the coordination with the utility companies is taking place. Once we have that in hand, then the design and build proposal can be put out there for persons to then start the designs for MTW to review. And it is our hope that we can work it within the works program as soon as that is completed. So I regret the tone that perhaps by not doing the road that we have caused deaths. As an attorney, I think, I know better than most that I don't know that you can insinuate that the ministry has caused the death of somebody because they haven't done a road, because there's so many roads across the country which we haven't done, and we are not being accused of killing anybody. What I think your motive for saying it is to perhaps encourage us to pay a little bit more attention a little faster. But I assure you that it is not lost on me or my team that people have lost lives on that road, and that there needs to be a degree of urgency to be able to address the issues that would prevent anybody else from losing life. But I certainly cannot sit here and agree with you that it should go there, that MTW does not, and its technical team does not care about people's lives, or that we're in the business of not doing a road and it has cost persons' lives. There are lots of factors that relate to accidents that has nothing to do with MTW. I think where we are at fault, I would be the first to put up my hand and say that we are at fault, but I don't think that we can accept responsibility for those comments at this stage. But I assure you that we will get to it. Certainly the assessments this financial year, and then moving forward, we will certainly urgently seek to be able to enter into arrangements to start the reconstruction of that particular road.
As a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, I do not think that anybody on Lodge Road would be comfortable with the response from the minister because I raised this matter last April. Last April. And my question here this morning is not about the fact that you have to do designs and you have to do the necessary works. What I would love to understand is matters that relate to public safety. Why does the ministry take as long as it seems to be taking to have these matters addressed? So I'm not saying that in any way that the ministry contributed to the deaths of the persons. I'm simply saying that a situation has arisen where you have had deaths taking place on a major artery. The resources are available, and the ministry seems incapable of responding to the mission. And there is nobody that I can explain to on Lodge Road. And coincidentally, just by coincidence, Mr. Chairman, when the landlord of my constituency office refurbished the constituency office in 2021, the gentleman who lost his life with a hit and run was the gentleman who painted the constituency office, Mr. Chairman. And therefore, I don't come here to embarrass anybody. The gentleman walked from his home down the road, painted the office every day, whilst the ministry was supposed to be doing the work in all that time from 2020 until now to have the designs done. I have personally put money into, I have personally increased the acts of this ministry in these votes to have these matters addressed. I do not believe that I can go to any of my constituents on Lodge Road now and give them a satisfactory answer. And that is regrettable, because with respect to the allocation of funds, there's no excuse in this matter whatsoever. So I'm not saying that the ministry is responsible for anybody's deaths, because those persons who were driving were negligent with respect to their actions completely. But I fundamentally believe that if the ministry had acted with haste, I would not be having this conversation here this morning, Mr. Chairman. Can I move to my second question?
Please do.
Thank you, sir. Now, I hope that with the expansion of housing development in the country, we have seen on the Cox Road, which is between the roundabout by Coral Ridge, going all the way down to Blackman Gollop. At Ridge Meadows, which is in my constituency, we have about 700 homes to be constructed. There are just about 200 or so that have finished, and people are there. On Cox Road, further down, closer to Blackman Gollop, that's, I think, 1,100 houses that are meant to be built. Even though it's not in my constituency, it's on the artery. And not everybody who is in a home has a vehicle. And the extent to which the demand for additional public transportation is required. The residents of Ridge Meadows, and particularly Edie Village as well, who rely on public transportation to get their children to school, as well as to work. And I'm certain the residents on further down Cox Road and the other development would love to know from this ministry what relief they can get with respect to being able to get the children to attend school, as well as people to get to work on time, in relation to public transportation that is reliable, not just in the morning, but in the evening to get home either from school or from work.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will ask Ms. Linda Holder or Mr. Fabian Wharton, I'm not sure who is at the table, to perhaps respond to you to address the specific concern you have raised.
Good morning again. The route being discussed is the Edith Village route. We have taken note of the increased developments that are going on in the area and on that particular route. And again, as we receive more resources, it is expected and is planned that that particular route will see an increase in service. Presently, it is serviced by smaller vehicles, primarily because of the ridership levels. But we are seeing that there will be some new houses added in, so we know we'll have to make that vehicle a larger vehicle, and we'll have to look at the frequency again, because it is no longer an hour service as it was before, and we're going to be looking at that as well with the new sources of vehicles that are coming. I hope I answered your query, sir.
Only a function of timeline, because people are moving in almost every week on both sides. And therefore, whilst I know that the new development that is taking place on the other side is not likely to require transportation unless people working there need it, the reality is that government's lower income housing program is accelerating, and therefore as people get greater access to mortgages and are able to move in, not everybody, as I said, has access to a vehicle at the same time. So we're going to have to ensure that we understand that the needs of those persons have to be taken into account. And we will need a timeline for which we can see additional supply of service playing that route. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed urgently, because it's not just the fact that they have new people, but the people that live there, Philippergum South, Edie Village, and along that St. David's in that area also need to have a dedicated service to be able to get to and from work, because it's not an easy place to get to. And certainly in the morning and the evening is going to be critical to have that done. So a specific timeline is going to be important to give the residents some comfort. Chair, my last question relates to drainage now. And I can say that the ministry, when it comes to drainage, has done some very good work in the constituency. But in recent times, we've seen some challenges where, on a couple of fronts. One, there are a number of, and I think it's across the board, but there are a number of wells and culverts and stuff that needs to be replaced. And I'm not sure, well, I do know that there are some standards that have been established with respect to the dimensions and specifications of these things. So I'm trying to understand a little bit why we haven't been able to see the repair of some of the wells and culverts and stuff happen faster. But that's one part. But in the Newton Durance area of late, we have seen rivers of water flowing, coming off of either the highway and certainly off of the golf course into that area, causing some localized flooding, if you like, within that space. Now, whilst I know that the persons that live adjacent to the golf course are what you may refer to as well off, the reality is that the water flowing down the hill still has an impact on them, and therefore we have reached out to the ministry for what really is to be the intervention that either has caused that to happen, and what would be the remedy for this thing to no longer take place, because it's at least now 2 years that every time the rain falls, the videos speak for themselves. I mean, literally, I don't remember, I think it's Ridgemont is the name of the road, but literally, there is a river created that floods all of the houses on the golf course side. It usually runs off relatively quickly, but as you would appreciate, whilst the government has put in place a mechanism for persons to be able to trigger a claim against their flood insurance for land tax purposes, it is really the inconvenience and the damage that we need to find a solution for, so that these matters can be adequately addressed. So I would like to hear from the ministry, what is the plan for the repair of the general culverts and wells and that type of infrastructure to complete the job that was started? And then what is the plan for this specific intervention as it relates to the flooding on Durance and Newton in relation to what's happening in recent times? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will ask the head of drainage just to repeat himself again in relation to the plans for the drainage unit, and also to address the specific issue in your constituency that you have raised.
Yes, the drainage unit is aware of the situation. And just let me bring to the attention of the Honourable representative of the area is that part of the problem in Durance is that the water sheds across the golf course into the road. Now, the ministry has written the owners of the golf course, bringing them aware of the situation. Now, as you should know, in the Act, it speaks of owners of land keeping flood water at them and not allow the water to enter onto other people's properties.
I'm not hearing you clearly. I'm not hearing you clearly.
Okay. I said that the ministry had written the owners of the golf course, bringing them aware of the situation where the water is sheeting across their land onto the road and causing... Okay. You can hear me now? Okay. The ministry has written the golf course, making them aware of the situation where the water is sheeting across the golf course into the road. And that is part of the problem. We are awaiting a response from the golf course. The drainage unit could go ahead and do their maintenance with the infrastructure. If any infrastructure needs to be replaced or repaired, we will go ahead and do that. A survey will be done within the area to identify the maintenance work that needs to be done. But the golf course needs to keep their water on their lands. So to sum up, yes, we will carry out a survey within the area and do maintenance work as needed, but that's not going to solve the full problem.
So, quick follow-up, Chair. Has anyone from the ministry actually gone to the golf course?
Yes, we visited the... What do you mean gone to the golf?
Met with the...
No, we met with the residents in the area. We just written the golf course, the owners of the golf course.
So you've not gone to the golf course?
No.
I rest here.
Thank you. Honourable members, all. I will give opportunity to the honorable member for St. George North, followed by the honorable member for St. Peter. The opportunity to ask your question, and then we have to wrap up.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that report progress is honored the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again.
The question is that we do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Reported progress and ask and request leave to sit again. Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Beg to move that we now suspend for lunch until 3 p.m. today.
The question is that this honorable chairman be suspended until 3 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chairman stands suspended until 3 p.m.